Well, good morning, everybody. It is Experience Friday Live, and it's our first show for 2023. And you might hear a little bit of noise around me today because I am sitting in the Seattle airport getting ready to travel, but so excited about today and the things that are happening for 2023 in the world of experience. I just want to let you know a couple of great announcements happening. We are launching on January 25th, season 8 of the Combustion Chronicles. We have 12 amazing guests. You see 9 of them here. And we are talking about all things experience. So, January 25th, Combustion Chronicles, season 8. Don't forget about that. As well as don't forget about the Experience Immersion Unconference that we are hosting in Vegas for 40 to 50 people. If you are interested, reach out to me and let's talk about it. Would love to have you there. More importantly, we have an amazing guest with us today, Stephanie Abbott. I have come to follow a lot on LinkedIn and love her presence. Stephanie joined Adventist Health as Chief Experience Officer, a newly created position in 2021 to accelerate the health system's work toward its 2030 strategy to provide personalized, consumer-focused healthcare across the entire care continuum. She's a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. Abbott is a member of the American College of Healthcare Executives and has served in executive leadership roles with Intermountain Healthcare and HCA. She earned an MBA with a specialization in healthcare administration from South University and a bachelor's degree from the University of South Florida. So let's welcome to the stage with me today, Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for letting me be here today.
It's unusual for me to see people walking behind me because I'm usually not, but so it is so great to be on here with you today, Stephanie, and to just share a little bit with us for the next 20 or so minutes about the world of experience and, in your opinion, why it is so important. But we start every episode with the same question for every guest, and it is simply this question: why do you do what you do? And what keeps you motivated as you do it? And I know we'll get into some of that, so don't give all the secrets away, but yeah, tell us, why do you do what you do and what keeps you motivated?
What keeps me motivated is when you see the light bulbs go off in people and you really start to see that they're getting why we're doing what we're doing, right? And all the times and all the trainings that you've been doing with people, and that light bulb just goes and you're like, oh, that's what you get. And then also, too, when you get that recognition from patients saying a job well done. I walked into my office this morning and I've gotten a handwritten letter from a patient telling us, and make sure I don't have any PHI, but telling us how fabulous we are. And I mean, who does handwritten letters anymore, right? And so this just absolutely melted my heart about how this gentleman just had an amazing experience at one of our hospitals. I'm going to go put it on the CEO's desk after this meeting today. But it's those moments.
It's amazing what that does for your days, doesn't it?
Oh, it's great. It's like you start your day off with a smile. And this is why we do what we do in experience, is because it's really hard to create an experience that's compassionate all the time because there's just so many different factors. But when you get it right and somebody recognizes it, game changer.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, I know how all of us, even though people say, oh, I don't need encouragement or I don't need accolades. I know that deep down inside every person, when you get that moment, when you read that letter that you've, especially I think in healthcare, Stephanie, because, you and I have been on a very similar journey and, all of our listeners know my battle with colon cancer this last year. But those moments when you get that of like, let's keep going, right? And how important that is. So that is so awesome. So I asked you previous to the show, I said, hey, Stephanie, send me your favorite quote. And you did. And when I saw it, I was like, okay, that's an awesome quote. And I want to dig into this because I think it is who you are and what you are as a person. And the quote is, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that's by Mother Teresa. And so tell us, why is that quote so important to you? And how does it then relate to creating the human experience that we talk about in healthcare?
You know, over anything that I am, an executive or subject matter expert, I am a wife and a mom first. And I love my family. Sometimes when we say I was working for a company at one point that was just sucking the life and energy out of me. So much to the point that before I would start working, I would cry in the morning. And my husband was like, I don't understand why you're doing this, you know? And so what I started to see was that when I wasn't happy in my career, right? Because I love what I do. Um, what ends up happening is you end up taking that out on your family, right? You're not as present as you can be. You're not as happy as you should be with your family. You might be shorter than normal, you know? And so with that, I noticed that, just wasn't in a really good headspace. And so it was like I had to get back to that point to know that, you know what? The, even though I love what I do, this is a job. My number one job is to be a mother and a wife to these amazing human beings. And I saw that quote, and that was where I just was like, you know what? No matter what, it's all about my family. And I start thinking about what that also means with my role is I want to make healthcare a better space for my husband, my family members, my children, so that they have the best experience possible when they have healthcare needs.
I don't think it could be more beautifully said. And so I love that you're looking from that lens, and we're getting so many comments. And I love this, from Cody. Hearing from patients directly is the best part of working in healthcare. Going back to the note that you received, and even we've got people, just so you know, Stephanie, listening from Somalia this morning. We've got people from globally. So, so tell us though, like, let's get this in because a lot of our listeners want some real tactical stuff. And so, knowing that that's your number one job, knowing that you lean into that, you actually were quoted. I found this actually, someone internally wrote about a statement you said, and I want to dig into this. And it was simply this: everybody experiences healthcare, including the people that I love most, as you were just talking about in this world: my husband, my son, my daughter, my parents, my friends that I have made in healthcare. And then you go on to share that they all interact with healthcare, and your role is to help improve processes and experiences so that my friends can deliver better care, and so the people that I love most have a better experience. So let's talk tactically because those are, amazing quotes and all of that. Let's go back to that because we are seeing a shift, I believe, in healthcare, and you can disagree with me or agree, but now we're starting to talk about human experience. We just saw one of the most, the biggest companies, Press Ganey, who now are titling human experience in their conference. And how does that apply to your day-to-day role? Like the Teresa quote, you in that position, how does that apply to when you walk into the office today and your day-to-day life?
I love that we're starting to call things the human experience because that's really what it is. And unfortunately, what we've done is we really segmented experience. So it's employee experience, it's provider experience, it's patient experience, but really it's human experience, right? And unfortunately, when you segment that out, you usually have different leaders over it, right? So you're all trying to merge your different plans together, but it again, it's designing it for human, right? Having that. So, you know, what's been when I'm coming to work and I'm looking at, well, how am I doing things? And then what I had said there is like making things a better place for my friends, is because in healthcare, you make friends in healthcare, right? So my job is trying to take things off those leaders' plate and improve processes so that they can have more time to provide like compassionate care to patients. A lot of times in typical patient experience world, we focus on large tactics, bedside shift report, hourly rounding, all of these things. But there's so much more to experience in designing what consumers want and designing what our caregivers need, right? So it's really applying that Lean Six Sigma, looking for where our opportunities are in process, right? Learning from our staff, going to the front lines and saying, hey, what is the barrier, and trying to fix those specific processes for our teams on the front lines so that we can remove the friction for them. That then creates a better patient experience because they have more time, more energy. They're not as frustrated. Your employees, no matter what, are number one. So your patient experience will never supersede your employee experience. So really focusing on them, then they will deliver a better experience for your patients.
Well, if those that have watched the show several times, and if you've watched, when I'm home, I have pom poms, and I would be shaking my pom poms right now, because Stephanie, and you know this, and our listeners know this, that I spent 7 years working for the Walt Disney Company, and just even recently with Bob Iger stepping back in and taking the reins of the company again, he will tell you that the reason the Disney experience is the way that it is because of how they invest in their cast members. Keep the cast members happy, and I've said this and I've been quoted for this. I'm like, if you get the human experience right, you will get the numbers you need.
Yes.
And if we could get healthcare to stop focusing, and listen, this could probably be a 7-hour conversation. If we could get healthcare to quit focusing on, we've got to get this star rating, or we've got to get this, or we've got to get that, and let's just focus on the human experience and making sure that our associates are taken care of. People will totally know me know I don't like the word even employee, because I think that's demoralizing. I use associates. I don't know if it's any better, but my first corporate job was Disney, and I was called a cast member. So thank you for sharing that. We are getting a lot of stuff in, but this one particular question, this may have to put your thinking cap on for this one. And this is from Joe. It says, Stephanie, how does your role and mission interact with reducing clinical burnout? Do you have a peer owning that mission? And I think this ties totally into what we were just talking about.
Yeah. So it was interesting. We actually have like a nursing, I don't know what we call it, but we bring in a bunch of nurses from across our organization. And we have a couple of days where they do learning, they do different activities. We try to, tell them thank you for reimagining care during a pandemic, for example, right? Like they're doing things that nobody else has ever done. And so, one of the things that we talked about this last time was burnout. And then they were very sensitive of the word that we use when we talk about burnout. And they didn't want they wanted to talk more about like resiliency. And so when we were specifically working with them, and whoever question just asked, is that really your role, or do you have a partner? This is a partnership. Remember we were talking about the different types of, it's a human experience, but there's different types of buckets, right? This isn't sitting in somebody else's bucket. But I will tell you, the role of a patient experience leader is really to help leaders learn how to fish, right? So like my role is a lot of leadership development. And with that comes a lot of listening, a lot of looking at processes and trying to help change process and look for where those waste and those inefficiency is, and then help teams guide them into process improvement for their specific areas. And if that process improvement is focusing on employee well-being, then there's a partnership with other strategic leaders across the organization for that.
We are getting tons of questions coming in, so I love it. And so some amazing comments. I love this too. Cody says, I've always said the human that uses a really well-designed fintech app is the same human that shows up to their workplace, who also shows up at a hospital for a patient experience. At least that's how it worked the last time I checked. So really saying that we're all humans. I love it. And then Christina, I love the idea of putting employees first in order to create a great experience for customers. There aren't enough companies that get that. It's always about the humans, not the numbers. And then Diane has a question for you. How do you, Stephanie, align the safety culture with the patient and human culture strategies?
No, that's great. So, the world of patient experience, right? It's like almost segmented in its own bucket. When I was at Intermountain Healthcare, we were on a high reliability journey. And so I got to do some work with IHI, and I became a certified patient safety officer through that experience. And what really started to flip my perspective was when I got that training, was that everything we do in patient experience is really about patient safety. So I was actually, after that training, able to connect more with clinicians to show them when we do bedside shift report is a handoff, and a handoff is actually one of the top 3 areas that we have medical errors across our organization or across the country, right? It's usually like in those top 3. So when we do bedside shift report, even though it feels like a patient experience tactic, it's all about patient safety. And so this isn't Stephanie telling you that we need to do this. This is the reason why we do it. It's the same thing with hourly rounding, right? We don't do it for patient satisfaction. We do it to keep our patients safe. So now anytime we implement something in our field, or at least what I've been doing, is I always make sure that we link it to patient safety first, because that's always number one. And Shawn, one of the things too that about Disney that I absolutely love is, yes, cast members, employees, associates are number one. But what they've done is they've really built that culture, right? And so based upon their culture, they have certain standards, right? And safety is number one. In healthcare, safety has to be number one, no matter what, right?
I love that you recognize that, Stephanie, because a lot of people don't realize that about Disney. But yes, they have 4 pillars that they stand on, and their first pillar is safety. And what they do say is that all 4 pillars are equal. But when you're in a critical situation and you have to make a decision,
Yep.
you lead with safety first. And I know for me, when I worked at Disney, I didn't understand that until I remember one of my first projects was the revamp of Space Mountain, and the amount of safety checks that goes through every day before someone gets on. So when people in healthcare say to me, well, it's just different, we're just a highly regulated industry, I'm like, do you not think that riding a roller coaster is a highly regulated industry? Right? Like, how many people ride those roller coasters every day? And they don't get a 99% satisfaction. We're 99% safe, right? Like that's
not good.
what just blows my mind. Yeah. I don't want to be 99% safe when I get on a roller coaster. I want to make sure we're at 100% in safety. So I love how because I will say this, I think I've even struggled with that. I'm like, gosh, we lead with safety so much in healthcare, and the way you just presented it was absolutely beautiful. So, what is the one thing right now that keeps you up at night in your Chief Experience Officer?
Did Did you notice the long breath out? Resources. Right now, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that healthcare is struggling. Most organizations, not all, but most organizations are struggling financially. And so there are limited resources to get some of the work, to get the work done. But in healthcare, we're really good at getting creative with the resources we do have. So it's just kind of pivoting and figuring out, what's your top priority and what can you get done right now. So that's what keeps me up, because it's like I'm one of those get it doneers, and I want to do everything now and get all these outcomes, but you just have to kind of slow down because there isn't as many resources as there used to.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's disheartening to me. That's scary to me. And I think someone's going to wake up one day and go, "Holy cow!" Because, as you know, across the board, many organizations are looking at experience still as a cost center, and so they go after it very fast, and that scares me. So, one last question I've got here. Oh, I think I may have two coming in. What is the number one thing healthcare can learn from Disney to create associate engagement?
Oh, Wendy. I love Wendy. We work together. So, number one thing that healthcare can learn from Disney to create associate engagement is consistency. And so, what I love about Disney is that, like what we were just talking about, they have those pillars. So, those 4 pillars, I think, are safety, hospitality, show, and then
They've changed. They've changed now. Um, keep talking.
Okay. So basically,
and I'm pulling them up right now.
Oh, okay. So basically, these 4 pillars, what ends up happening is that even though they're all equal, they come in a certain order. So when you have to make a decision, whether you're the CFO approving projects or you're the ride operator, you know how to make specific decisions. And what I really love about that is that it creates a consistent framework for employees across the hotels, across the parks, across the cruise lines. Um, in healthcare, we tend to think that we're terminally unique, right? And we're just like, oh, we're this and oh, we're that. I actually did a partnership with Disney, and this is how I learned so much about their culture. But it was interesting is when we went in, we were like talking to Disney, and we're just like, oh, well, we have contract labor. And they're like, oh, well, did you know 70% of the employees at Disney are contract laborers? But yet they still create an amazing culture that's consistent across countries and different service lines. We're like, okay, well, we have unions. And they're like, well, guess what? Mickey's a Teamster, right? And then we kept coming up with all these, well, we're different. And every time we did that, Disney was just like, no. And so we make up these terminal uniquenesses, and it really just comes back to culture, consistency, and helping our employees know what that train of thought is when they make decisions, and then that's what then delivers a better patient or better experience for their consumers.
Well, and so there they are on the thing. Safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency are now the 4. They tweaked a couple, and that goes back to exactly what you were saying, Stephanie. When you have to, they're all 4 equal, but when you have to make a decision, this is the order that you think about: safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. But what people also don't, if you've not studied, and I know you've done a ton there, what people also don't understand is they have a common purpose statement that's an internal statement. It's a statement that we call the experience promise at Mofi. When we work with organizations and help them build their experience promise, it's the one thing that they everybody, no matter who you are, if you're Bob Iger or you're the garbage man or the bus driver, um, everyone knows what that common purpose is and those four pillars are. And that's how they effectively keep it. So
Yep.
I love your example of it, and so awesome. All right, we have got some more questions, I think. We do. Here's one. If you could wave a magic wand and solve one thing for healthcare to create a better experience, what would you do?
Wave a magic wand and solve one thing. I would solve employee engagement. Cody, that's such a hard question. I think about employees are number one, right? And where that magic wand we need to swing is improve employee experience, and improving the employee experience, a lot is around that process improvement and finding what's driving our staff nuts every single day and helping to remove those barriers so that we can fix it and improve. That would be my magic.
I love it. And Cody Hand from North Carolina says, this is so true. Healthcare could learn so much if they'd get out of thinking they're so unique. I love that. Yes. And by the way, Cody Walls now says to you, I like hard questions. So
I like
well, Stephanie, we're at the end of our 30 minutes. Holy cow, tons of engagements. I hope everyone else just learned and understands some of the behind the scenes. And I loved how all the comparisons you gave us today. And I think my big takeaway, and I think everyone else's that you're hearing here, is healthcare is not so unique. It's not that it's not solvable. We just got to get out of our own way, and that's gonna be the thing that solves it. So, Stephanie, if people want to get in touch with you, I'm suppose that we want to send them to your LinkedIn. So if you want to follow Stephanie on LinkedIn, that's how she and I actually connected through our personal journeys, and we are both very active there. So follow her there. Stephanie, if you will just hang out while I close up the show, and then I'll come back and say goodbye to you. So thank you again so much, Stephanie.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. That was Stephanie Abbott. Hope you enjoyed everything that she brought to us today. It was really powerful. As I mentioned to you, Season 8 of the Combustion Chronicles going live on January 25th. And you'll see it scrolling on the bottom right now, our Vegas experience. We have 40 people that we're going to join with. If you want to be one of those, go to experiencevegas2023.com, reach out, send questions. We would love to have you there to join us. And we most importantly hope that you have an amazing, amazing weekend with your family, your friends, doing what you love. And until 2 weeks from today, we will be back with Experience Friday Live. Thank you for all you listeners, and we wish you a very, very, very happy weekend.